Team, welcome back. We're here to look at the urinary or excretory system today in this set of videos. This is how your body is going to get rid and flush out various components. It's a very important system in your body. We don't, we often think of the body just removing materials, but um, there's a lot of detail that goes into that. So, a couple of things that it's going to do, it's going to get rid of metabolic waste. So, from metabolism, what kind of waste your body produces, we'll get rid of that. But this is the body system that's going to manage your water salt balance. This is going to help with those concentration gradients. In addition, it's going to help with the acid base balance as well. There are also some organs involved, which are going to help us with a couple of hormones. So they're going to help with the endocrine system as a secondary role. So in our bodies, there's different types of metabolic waste that we can have. You can see here on the right, there's urea, which is what we produce. Uric acid, that's that pasty white stuff from bird excrement that you see. That's uric acid. And then fish will produce ammonia, which is another nitrogenous compound. We say nitrogenous because all these wastes have a nitrogen in them, but we're not going to get into the biochemistry too much in this course. So urea, this is through amino acid metabolism, as mentioned before. Amino acids do not get stored in your body. So if you have excess ones, you end up producing urea as a waste product, and this ends up in our bodies. If you ever have ammonia in your system, we'll combine that with carbon dioxide to form urea. So that excess oxygen that your cells could not get rid of in your blood, it actually ends up into your liver so that we can convert it into urea, which is something we can manage. Ammonia, on the other hand, is super toxic, so we don't typically have that in our system. Just jumping down to the bottom, uric acid, this is a break off of some nucleotides. You end up with this crystalline substance. Remember, with birds, it's that white pasty stuff. You probably don't want those crystals in your body, though. So, urea is typically what we manage with. If you have too much uric acid, you end up with what's called gout, where you have the crystals forming in your body systems. Now, another one of the things that your excretory system is going to help with is the water salt balance. So we have this blood volume, which needs to have some sort of water salt balance, but it is mostly blood. Your salt is going to be regulated. So when I say salts, I'm talking about the potassium, the bicarbonate ions, and the calcium ions also. Sodium is involved, but sodium has a slightly different role because it's very well managed by our body. And we'll talk about that in a little bit as well. Regards to your acid base balance, you want to make sure that if there are hydrogen ions, we can get rid of those. That's going to define a base. And we want to reabsorb bicarbonate ions to manage some basicity inside of our system. So our pH for our urine typically is a 6. The lower you get, the more acidic you are, and 7 is neutral. So 6 is slightly acidic because of those extra hydrogen ions, those extra protons in our urine. Now, we also can secrete hormones in this body system. This is going to happen from quite often your adrenal glands, which are located on top of your kidneys. So we got renin, which leads to this aldosterone release from your adrenals. And then this is also going to help us reabsorb sodium. This is a really important thing to keep the sodium in our body so we can keep using that. We've also got erythropoietin, which is going to help us produce red blood cells. And we need this to reactivate and reproduce those red blood cells as we go through them on a regular basis. We also have this erythropoietin to help us with vitamin D and activating that so that we can actually absorb the calcium that's in our bodies. I know it's a small amount, but it is something that we still need to work with. Here you can see a front-on view. So this is from the front side of the body, the anterior side of the body of this urinary system. And it includes a number of other body systems as well. So as mentioned, we've got those adrenals. You can't see them on this image, but that's part of your endocrine system. We've got a couple of arteries and veins, the renal artery and vein, which are going to be part of your circulatory system, but also your urinary system. But the new organs, which we haven't seen yet, you've got the urinary bladder, the urethra, the ureters, and the kidneys. So all these different organs listed on the right are going to be part of our urinary and excretory system, but you can see how quickly and how well connected they are to other body systems as well. Those organs include our kidneys, the ureters, urinary bladder, and the urethra. We're going to talk about each of those in a little bit of region, a little bit of detail. Kidneys in particular, these are found in the lumbar region, which is the lower part of your back. You will find them on the back of your body. They're behind the peritoneum, which is the encasing of your lower abdominal cavity. And they have a really tough capsule. I know we're not doing dissections this year, but if you were to feel a kidney, like they're really tough to actually squeeze. you've ever had like a well done steak, or if you've overcooked a steak or something, you've touched how tough it is. That's kind of what kidneys end up tasting. It's kind of what kidneys end up feeling like. Eat cooked kidneys, I guess. Don't taste kidneys. That's weird. There's two different sides to the kidneys. The inner side is the hilus, which is a concave, so it's got a divot in it. That divot is allowing you to connect some arteries and veins for a blood supply. Blood supply is important because this is where we're filtering our blood, so it needs to have a blood supply directly connected. At the very end of your kidneys, you have what's called a collecting duct, which empties into a ureter, and the ureter is going to take urine from your kidneys to your bladder. So anything that we cannot reabsorb ends up in urine. It goes to your bladder. So there's a couple of layers to this. You have mucosa, a smooth muscle, and a connective tissue layer. And the urine is going to move through peristalsis. That's squeezing of a toothpaste tube motion. That's how we're going to get the urine into our bladder. Our bladder, also known as the urinary bladder, is going to store urine. It's expandable in two different directions so that we can make it a little bit larger and keep urine in there for a while. It's also got two sphincters. It's got an internal smooth muscle sphincter. You don't have control over this muscle. So when there's urine in your bladder, this one tends to open up. If you ever had to pee so bad you just couldn't hold it, it's because this one opens up. You also have an external skeletal muscle sphincter, which you have control over. So if you ever stopped yourself from peeing, don't do that. Or if you're holding in your pee, that is your external sphincter. If you hold this closed for too long, though, your brain thinks there's something wrong and will retake control. It'll reopen this up. But this is the one that you do have control over. Remember, internal is involuntary control, no control. External is voluntary control, exvo, for you have control over that. So a couple of side-on images. Here we've got the female body. The urethra on the female body is slightly different. It's very short, so it increases the odds of getting UTIs, urinary tract infections. That's where bacteria enter the bladder, and that's because the urethra is so small. So it's really important for women, especially those who are practicing with sex, to pee after sex and to practice really good hygiene. That prevents the bacteria from building up and getting into that urinary bladder. If it does, you could end up with a UTI or other types of infections as well. Very easy to contract these because the urethra is so short. In males, on the other hand, the urethra is very long. It's super long, so if there ever is a bacterium that gets into the urethra, it takes a long time for it to get into the bladder, so it's less likely for the UTI to form. But still, it's a good idea to pee after sex to flush out anything that's in there. Males should be a little bit more wary, though, about prostate, where they have a gland just behind their urinary bladder here. And that's going to be pretty important for issues that they're having later on in life. So you shouldn't be holding in your pee if you're a male either, because you'll start to put pressure on that prostate. And enlarged or prostate cancers can also trigger your urinary system because they're always impacting the bladder. Now, the process of getting rid of or excreting the fluids from your system is called urination. So that's when you pee. You have these stretch receptors in your bladder. They get an impulse when you have about 250, so a quarter of when you have about a cup of urine in your system, so a quarter of a liter. And you get a couple of signals. You get this bladder contraction first. So when your bladder is really full at 250 mils, your bladder gets really full, starts to contract, so it starts to squeeze on you, and then micturition starts to happen, and that's the actual action of peeing. This is a reflex that you can override if you are an adult. So you're considered an adult in this case. If this ever happens, you can control and stop this. It allows you to delay peeing for a period of time. Not the healthiest option, but it is something that you can do from time to time. If you're a child, however, like babies, they can't control when they pee. Kids pee their pants all the time. That's because they don't have as much of a control over this. And when you get older, when you become a senior, you might lose control over this as well. Pregnancy can also lead to losing control over this signal, and there's a couple of other things that can impair your ability to control this impulse. Things like alcohol, for example, if that gets into your system, there's too much, your brain starts to lose that connectivity. So you still get the signal, but you can't respond to it. So people that have drank too much are also prone to peeing themselves because they don't have control over the micturition. So here you can see what that loop looks like. There's your bladder. You have two different fibers, the parasympathetic fibers that are going to your nervous system through your spine. You have no control over that. You do have the somatic nerve, however, which is connected to the external sphincter, which you can stop the pee from coming out from. But that can be overridden by your brain if it feels like it needs to. Okay, that brings us to the functional unit of the kidney. This is going to be called the nephron. I'm going to pause here, though. We are going through a lot of content, so we'll pause here and I'll pick up on things in the next section where I will start and describe the nephron for you. You should be aware and know how to draw a nephron. You should know how to identify the different parts of a nephron. So it's a little bit more detailed, but we'll take a peek at this in the next video. Anyways, thanks for watching, and we'll catch you in the very next one.